In this video, we're going to talk about 3 of the last small cities that still exist outside of Indianapolis, so stay tuned. Hey everybody, I'm Jason Compton with Living in Indianapolis. Welcome back to the channel. If you have questions about Indianapolis or any of the surrounding suburbs, especially some of the cities and towns that we're going to talk about today in this video, make sure that you reach out any way that you know how. We'll always have your back with those questions, and we'll certainly have your back when it comes time for you to make your move to the Indy Metro. So I heard this actually quite a long time ago now, one of these cities on here, and I'll get to that in just a second. This person called it the last city just outside of Indianapolis. And so Indianapolis has grown tremendously, and then some of those cities that surround Indianapolis, like some of the popular ones, Carmel, Fishers, Greenwood on the south side, they've grown tremendously too, but they share a border with Indianapolis very obviously. And it's as if Indianapolis and those other cities blend together. And if you don't know exactly where the borders are, sometimes it's kind of hard to tell that you've gone from one city to the next. So this is a city where it's a little bit easier to see that. And it's not the only one. There are others out there, but I just thought it was funny that he said that this was the last one, and it had me thinking, well, in the past year or two, some of these places have come up a lot more, because if we look at the map, and this is Indianapolis here, of course. Indianapolis, the border, and we see Carmel, we see Fishers, and we see Zionsville here. Mark this up. So we have Carmel, Fishers, Zionsville, and we get over here to Brownsburg, Plainfield, Avon, and there's Greenwood. And then even McCordsville has started to come up quite a bit. There's 2 million people in the Indianapolis Metro. Now that's a lot of people. That's actually more people than I think anyone out there realizes about Indianapolis. Indianapolis is larger than what people think. So there's 900,000 people or so in Indianapolis itself, but 2 million. The rest of that 1.1 or so comes mostly from these cities and towns that surround Indianapolis. But you've got some on the outskirts of that, because some of the conversations I've had with people and some clients had here in the past couple of years is that they don't want to be in that mix. Not that it's terribly crowded, but it's certainly not as crowded as some cities out there like New York, Miami, Los Angeles, or even some other cities that out of those 3 across the country, but it's more crowded than what they want. They want a little more small town or small city, but they don't want to be isolated. So they could live in this city or town and still have pretty easy access to Indianapolis, and certainly easy access to grocery stores or just general shopping, things like that, and maybe some unique features within that community too. Some unique restaurants, or if you get into festivals and things like that. So we're gonna hit some of these, and we're gonna start with that one that this person mentioned to me that got me thinking down this road, and especially after having some clients and people talk about places that might be similar to this. So number 1 is Greenfield, Indiana. And if we look at the map here, here's Indianapolis once again. Here's Greenfield, out here to the east. And you'll notice that I-70 runs right along here and goes what looks like past Greenfield. And if you were to go to this exit, you'll see, at least it feels like most of Greenfield is to the south of 70. You could get right off here on State Road 9, and there is a tremendous amount going on there on State Road 9 as far as commercial is concerned. So you got Home Depot, you got Walmart, you have restaurants. You can get it at downtown Greenfield and all of that. The concern for most people, and this isn't it's a small city, but it's not terribly small. We're talking about 24,000 people. So that's definitely enough to support itself and have things like I just said, Walmart, Home Depot. They have all the fast food that you can possibly imagine you're going to find across the country. And then they have some unique places for Greenfield too. And the downtown Greenfield, while it's old, it's pretty unique and cool and new. It's one of the old types of downtown setups where you have the courthouse right on the square and some pretty neat shops and buildings surrounding all of that. So if you look at the map, it's deceiving though about Greenfield. So it looks like this is really just all you get in Greenfield, and then we have this big gap between Greenfield and Indianapolis. Now this person said this is the last city outside of Indianapolis, not really to be swallowed by Indianapolis just yet. I will say that where Greenfield is located in the county out here, Hancock County, there's less than 100,000 people in this entire county, which is pretty amazing to think about, because if you're talking 2 million people around this entire metro, and there's less than 100,000 people in this big segment here, that means it's got a lot of room to grow, and there's some space. But realistically, is there space? Greenfield and Indianapolis actually share a border, and it can be, a little deceiving here, but if you come out of Greenfield, and whether you go down 70 all the way over here to Mount Comfort Road in this exit, so in here there's a Starbucks, McDonald's, there's a part of Hancock Health and one of their hospital facilities is out here, so there's quite a bit popping up right here at this exit. This is all actually still Greenfield. So we take a look at this address for this community church. You can see over here, Greenfield. And even when we get just a little further to the east, right here along 700, it's still Greenfield. So you don't have to live all the way over here to have a Greenfield address. You can fill in this gap. And if we look a little closer, you can see here's I-70 right here. Here's that State Road 9 going right down through the heart of Greenfield. Of course, we have a lot going on in here, and this looks like Greenfield proper. Once this clears up, there you go, and we get to State Road 9 and US 40. This is where downtown Greenfield is, and the courthouse is right here. And it's a pretty neat little spot. So here's where the courthouse is. You can just kind of see it. Some traffic actually goes through there for sure, but you have plenty of houses and businesses all through there. But as we get a little further away from that populated area, it does, as you go further west, feel like there's a little bit of space. And I'm going down US 40. I'm not going down I-70 right now. But you can still see that it's not totally devoid of humanity and people, just in general, or traffic. There's still some residential areas here, and there's some businesses as you go along 40 until you get just a little bit closer to Indianapolis. So as you get past that 700 west mark, like I said, you've got Greenfield all the way up to that, and then it turns into Indianapolis for the most part, although there's a little tiny town in there called Cumberland, and you can get some Cumberland addresses through there. It becomes a whole lot busier through here. You can see how much residential there is, and then there's also a ton of commercial through here. This is an old mall. It's not open anymore, but there's a Target right there, and you've got all kinds of other restaurants and businesses all down US 40. It's a really commercial area. So there is a little gap in here, but it's really not very big. If you go from on 70, especially this Greenfield exit over here to Mount Comfort, this is about 6 miles or so. And that means this distance is about 6 miles. But if you live in Greenfield, let's say somewhere in this area to the west of it, you are not very far from Indianapolis. You're just a handful of miles from it, and you're talking about a handful of minutes really just to travel over there to get anything that you might need from the Indianapolis side. But of course, Greenfield, all along this State Road 9, you pretty much have everything that you possibly need along that corridor as well. Now, I will say, if you are further, make this a little clearer, out here to the east, out in this direction of Greenfield, this will feel a lot more rural to you. It's going to feel like there are more farms around, a lot less commercial, and you're probably going to utilize Greenfield itself a whole lot more than Indianapolis. And it's going to be a little bit more of a distance and time to get over into Indianapolis if there's anything that you possibly need. Now, I will say something that's going to help with this in the future. Currently, if you're thinking about this and you're thinking about access, you want to live in Greenfield, but you work in Indianapolis, you're going to go to Indianapolis quite a bit, you're probably going to use I-70. And I-70 from Greenfield over into Indianapolis is tremendously easy to travel. There's not that much traffic along it. It's been widened over the years. There's a little bit of construction going on right now. It's actually going to be finishing up fairly soon. That's widening it even more in anticipation of more traffic coming out this way. You'll notice, well, first, if you jump on I-70 here, you can get into Indianapolis pretty fast. You can actually get from Greenfield to downtown Indianapolis in just under 30 minutes with no traffic. That's actually a little bit faster than you can get to downtown Indianapolis from Fishers or Carmel or nearly any other location around Indianapolis, minus maybe Plainfield or Avon, Brownsburg. Those can be maybe a little bit faster to get to downtown Indianapolis. This is one of the Greenfield exits right here. This is the Mount Comfort exit right there. And then this is the only other exit for Greenfield, really, that you have along I-70. In the future, there will be, erase these other two, there will be another exit here at 200. So you'll have one here at Mount Comfort, you'll have one at 200, and you'll have one at 9, which will make living right here in this particular area of Greenfield much more accessible for I-70, or getting off I-70 or getting onto I-70. So that's in anticipation just of a lot of the growth. There's a tremendous amount of business and, well, residential growth out here, but you'll notice Indianapolis Regional Airport right here. This is a fantastic airport, second busiest airport in the entire Indy Metro. You can see there's 2 runways here, lots of jet traffic through there, and this Walmart distribution center, which is brand new, is out here. So probably one of the biggest buildings I've ever seen in my entire life. I think it's the largest Walmart distribution center in the entire country. Well, they've taken notice of the fact that there's room in Hancock County and Greenfield, and they've set up shop out here. Amazon has a huge distribution facility out here as well, along with a lot of other companies. So that right there is a pretty big clue that this is a growing area, and that space between Indianapolis and Greenfield, even though there's a little, but it truly doesn't exist because Greenfield and Indianapolis do share a border, that space is filling in. So Greenfield could be a good option for you if you want that small city with still, you've got some direct access to Indianapolis and actually some pretty easy access to Indianapolis off of I-70. Okay, the second one is Franklin, Indiana, to the south of Indianapolis. Pretty similar size to Greenfield. It's actually just marginally bigger, about 26,000 people or so. So if we look at the map here, where I'm talking about, Franklin is down here to the south. So you can travel out of Indianapolis down I-65. You can also use US 31, although that's going to be a whole lot busier because of the traffic lights. It's not an interstate. You can definitely get down there to Franklin a whole lot faster. So I've had a lot of people actually ask about Franklin in the past couple of years, and I've had some clients purchase a home in Franklin in the past few years too. And again, it's one of those cities that is a little bit of separation between Indianapolis and itself, but it's closing in. You'll notice that you have Greenwood here to the south, and that's a popular suburb, gaining on 70,000 people or so in Greenwood. And then you've got some other addresses through here, but like Center Grove and some other exceptions through here too. But most of this is Greenwood to the south, So once you get to County Line Road, that's what this dotted line is here. There's the name of it right there, County Line Road. You get out of Marion County, and then you get into Johnson County. And so all of this, for the most part, is going to be Greenwood. But as you go a little further south, you get into New Whiteland and Whiteland. And over here, you can get into Bargersville. Done videos about, or a video about Bargersville, and many videos about Greenwood, and how if you're looking for the south side of Indianapolis, that could be a really good fit. Greenwood's a little bit more affordable than some of the other suburbs that you find around Indianapolis. But down here in Franklin, it does look like you've got a little gap, certainly between Greenwood and definitely Indianapolis, but it's pretty easy anywhere in Franklin to either jump on US 31 and go north, or jump on I-65 and go north and get connected back to Indianapolis. But it's not completely as separate as what a lot of people might realize. So if we look at the satellite, you can see Greenwood here and a lot of settled area. So a lot of residential. You get, good grief, some of these businesses keep popping up every time I press it, but that's a Kroger right there. And there are actually many Krogers along US 31, grocery store. Come down 31, and it is pretty commercial. Down here, and then you get into New Whiteland, and then into Whiteland. It could be a whole other video about the difference there between the two, but they're both quite small. And then just this little bit of separation, at least physically, between those, and finally getting here into Franklin. So it's filling in. Now, if you were going down to Franklin on 65, it'll look a little bit more open to you. In fact, when you get up here to Greenwood, when you're looking at Greenwood just as the city, when you get a little bit east of 65, this right here is actually the border, Greenwood. Right there. It looks a little more sparse out here, and that's because it is a little more sparse. These are warehouses right here. And so it's an area that was zoned for that, and you'll have some warehouses and distribution centers that are put in there, and they've got super easy access to I-65, so it made sense for a lot of businesses to do that. Very simple. But Franklin does look to have a little separation when you're on there on I-65. Now, I will say from Franklin, as long as your access to I-65 is relatively short, maybe just a couple of minutes or so, getting to downtown Indianapolis, it's not going to take you 40 minutes. It'll probably take a little bit less than that to get there, as long as you don't have any heavy traffic. And you usually don't have too much until you get right up to Indianapolis, and then it starts to get a little bit more heavy. So Franklin absolutely could be a pretty good option. I feel like it's probably a little bit further feeling and in time than what Greenfield would be. But if you're okay with coming to Indianapolis just a little bit less, then it could be a good fit for you. Also, Franklin College is down here, and that's one reason it's on the map for a lot of people. But a super neat community, really cool downtown area with a lot of really neat shops and restaurants. And again, kind of that old square, but larger than what you have in Greenfield. And very, very connected to a giant park right there next to it, and a lot of events go on. Franklin is a happening place, but it's not as busy as the type of busy I think that a lot of people are trying to avoid by moving to a place like Franklin. So certainly keep that one on your list. Even though I don't think it's as separated from Indianapolis as what people think, it just could be that little extra distance to Indianapolis that could be the hurdle to get over. All right, next on our list is Lebanon, Indiana, or Lebanon, Indiana, way up here to the northeast. Circle it on the map for you guys right here, and it also can be utilizing, or you can be utilizing I-65 to get to Lebanon. And there are other ways to get to it from some of these other towns and cities that surround it. But for the most part, if you live in Lebanon and you're going to Indianapolis, you're going to be using I-65. And it's a really fairly short drive going 70 miles an hour down I-65 down into Indianapolis and downtown Indianapolis, so the northwest side of Indianapolis. But there is some separation there, again, just like we have in some of these other cities. Well, Greenfield and Franklin, like we mentioned already, but some others out there too. But it's not as separate as it looks on this map. It looks like there's this big, huge gap between the two. And Lebanon has come up, another place with a super cool downtown, some unique shops. That's sort of the theme as we're going through some of these places. It has that small community, small city, small town feel, and they are relatively small. Lebanon is actually about 17,000 people, so Greenfield around 24,000, Franklin around 26,000. We are getting smaller, we are shrinking it, but super, super cool, super neat downtown's area, and a lot going on there. So you can be deceived by this gap. And on here, when we look at the satellite, there is more of a gap. That gap, again, is closing though. Eli Lilly, big company, pharmaceutical company in Indianapolis is opening a facility here that's going to bring in jobs, it's going to bring in more residents, and of course it's probably then going to bring in more commercial along with it. This gap right here is about all that's left, because when you get back this direction with Whitestown, this, along with Zionsville, but Whitestown especially, has grown and covered a lot of this area here and filled it in. So some commercial and certainly a lot of residential all through there. So it still looks, though, like there is a gap, but this is not a tremendous number of miles between those two. In fact, if you're down here and you get off the interstate, and I did this in a video going up to Lebanon, I stopped at this Starbucks right here. It's on Whitestown Parkway, and just about every single thing you can imagine commercial through here is there. So BW3s, there's a Meijer, there's a Lowe's in here as well, and then all kinds of restaurants. And you can see all of these neighborhoods all around this area, and it kind of blends in with Zionsville. So you see some Zionsville, like Zionsville West Middle Schools in here. Whitestown and Zionsville are right next to each other, I'm trying to say. But I jumped onto I-65 right here, and to get up to downtown Lebanon, all the way up in here, in this location, that took about 10 minutes. That's all it was. So from this location here up to there, 10 minutes. Pretty easy. So you can kind of extrapolate what that might mean getting down in here into downtown Indianapolis. So we're talking as long as the traffic along this portion of I-65 isn't all that bad. That's a little bit crooked. So this portion of I-65, as long as it's not too bad. Actually, when I switched over, all of these got a little bit crooked. I-65 into downtown Indianapolis from Lebanon, I mean, you're talking 40 minutes at most. Maybe a little bit more than that, but probably some days a little bit less than that too. So not a bad drive as long as you don't have all that much traffic in there. But Lebanon, Indiana is definitely something that's been popping up because of that Eli Lilly project. So I'm assuming that it's probably going to crack that 20,000 person mark at some point here in the next 5 years, maybe. And it's just being pulled closer to Indianapolis by Whitestown filling in. And then once you have a place like that, once you have a place like Whitestown filling in so much and people realize that you can live there, it kind of pulls in a place like Lebanon. There's another place that's happened, and this isn't on the list necessarily, but this has definitely happened over here to a place called Fortville, another place with a neat downtown, but Fishers has grown so much. It takes up pretty much all of this area here. It's pulled Fortville seemingly closer, and people thought, oh, what's this cool little downtown, this neat little spot where we can put these shops and restaurants, and it's kind of exploded. So it doesn't seem as far as it used to. That is really one of the definitions, I'd say, for Lebanon and its new discovery or being put back on the map more recently, is because this gap just doesn't seem like such a gap anymore. So there you have it. There are 3 smallish cities that surround Indianapolis that just don't seem really that far anymore. And they're populated enough to have pretty much everything that you're going to need on a daily basis. So if you have questions about any one of these cities, the last cities that surround Indianapolis, then make sure you reach out any way that you know how. We'll always have your back with those questions, as I said before, and we'll certainly have your back when it comes time for your move to any one of these cities or anywhere else in the Indy Metro. We'll catch you in the next one.